Namaskar. The Cabinet today approved the National Education Policy 2020. It brings in major reforms in higher education, including setting a target of 50% gross enrollment by 2035. A panel led by the former ISRO chief, Dr. Kasturi Rangan, had drafted this policy, which was then put into the public domain, and it received over 2 lakh suggestions. Now, it has obviously had very comprehensive consultation and wide engagement with stakeholders, and is a comprehensive policy, and that's going to be in focus tonight. Let's begin with the headlines. Big boost for the education sector. The Cabinet approves the new Education Policy 2020, paving the way for transformational reforms in school and higher education. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says that it will transform India into a vibrant knowledge hub and is based on the pillars of access, equity, quality, affordability and accountability. The policy aims to increase expenditure in the education sector to 6% of GDP, 50% of higher education enrollment ratio target by 2035. The Ministry of HRD now to be the Ministry of Education. Emphasis on mother tongue in school education. It's a new chapter in the country's defense preparedness. 5 Rafale fighter aircraft arrive in Ambala Air Base. This enhances India's Air Force's air power capability, and also Prime Minister says there is no virtue nor any sacrifice like the defense of the country. The Defense Minister and the Home Minister also welcomed the Rafale fighter jets, saying that it's important for the country's security. Unlock 3 guidelines issued. The lockdown is extended till 31st August in containment zones. Night curfew ends across the country. Yoga institutes and gyms will open from the 5th of August. Educational institutions, metro, cinema houses will remain closed. The programs for the 15th of August are allowed with restrictions and social distancing norms. The war against COVID continues in the country. The recovery rate has risen to 64.51%. The death rate remains the lowest since April, and it stands at 2.23%. The recovery cases now count near, it's up to the 10 lakh mark, and lockdown continues in some states. Political crisis continues in Rajasthan. Governor Kalraj Mishra again returns Gehlot government's proposal to call assembly session, says his concerns have not been addressed. The flood situation in Bihar is still critical. The flood situation worsens, in fact, in 12 districts. The SDRF and NDRF teams are engaged in rescue and relief work there. There's been a slight improvement in the flood situation in Assam. World Tiger Day is being celebrated all over the world today. Vice President Venkaiah Naidu congratulates the government of India for the successful implementation of Project Tiger in the country. Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar says that there are 50 tiger reserves in India with 2,967 tigers. The growing numbers are the biggest evidence of strengthening biodiversity. Well, a single regulator for higher education institutions, multiple entry and exit options in degree courses, discontinuation of MPhil programs, low-stakes board exams, common entrance exams for universities. These are among the highlights of the new education policy, which was approved by the Union Cabinet today. And the Cabinet also approved the changing in the name of the HRD Ministry to the Education Ministry. At least 3.5 crore new seats will be added in higher education institutions. Here's our report.
In a major move, the Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, approved the National Education Policy 2020 on Wednesday, making way for large-scale transformational reforms in both school and higher education sectors. This is the first education policy of the 21st century and replaces the 34-year-old National Policy on Education 1986.
ये बेहद महत्वपूर्ण है क्योंकि 34 साल से शिक्षा नीति में परिवर्तन नहीं हुआ था और इसलिए आज का ये जो परिवर्तन है और जो नई शिक्षा नीतियां है, मुझे विश्वास है कि पूरा समाज और सभी देशवासी इसका स्वागत करेंगे और दुनिया के शिक्षाविद भी इसको निश्चित रूप से सराहना करेंगे।
मानव संसाधन विकास मंत्रालय, जो अब शिक्षा मंत्रालय के नाम से जाना जाएगा, उस मंत्रालय की ओर से मैं अपने देश के यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री जी का आभार प्रकट करना चाहता हूं। मुझे भरोसा है कि जो ये हमारी शिक्षा नीति है, ज्ञान, विज्ञान, अनुसंधान, नवाचार, प्रौद्योगिकी से युक्त, संस्कार क्षम, मूल्य परक, हर क्षेत्र में हर परिस्थिति का मुकाबला करने वाली, पूरी दुनिया के लिए भारत में ज्ञान की महाशक्ति के रूप में उभर करके आएगी।
With emphasis on early childhood care and education, the 10+2 structure of school curricula is to be replaced by a 5+3+3+4 curricular structure corresponding to ages 3 to 8, 8 to 11, 11 to 14 and 14 to 18 years respectively.
It is aimed at bringing transformational change, not incremental change, but transformational change in both higher education sector and the school education. The new system in school will be 5+3+3+4 in place of 10+2. In higher education, there will be multiple entry and exit system, introduction of 4-year courses, common regulatory system by a common regulator, single regulator.
जो शिक्षा का माध्यम है उसमें ये लिखा है कि जहाँ तक पॉसिबिलिटी हो वहाँ तक 5वीं कक्षा तक मातृभाषा या नहीं तो क्षेत्रीय भाषा हो या घर की जो भाषा बोली जाती है उसमें पढ़ाया जाए, और हो सके तो 8वीं तक पढ़ाया जाए और उसके आगे भी पढ़ाया जाए जहाँ पॉसिबल हो। ये एक होलिस्टिक रिपोर्ट कार्ड की बात हो रही है। इसमें 3 तरह के मूल्यांकन होंगे। एक तो खुद बच्चा अपना मूल्यांकन करेगा, दूसरा सहपाठी जो उसके हैं वो उसका मूल्यांकन करेंगे, और तीसरा उसके शिक्षक उसका मूल्यांकन करेंगे।
The key highlights of the National Education Policy 2020 are school education, ensuring universal access at all levels of school education, early childhood care and education with new curricular and pedagogical structure, attaining foundational literacy and numeracy, reforms in school curricula and pedagogy, multilingualism and the power of language, assessment reforms, equitable and inclusive education, robust teacher recruitment and career path, school governance, standard setting and accreditation for school education, higher education, increase GER to 50% by 2035, holistic multidisciplinary education and research universities, the National Research Foundation. National Education Policy 2020 aims to increase the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, including vocational education, from 26.3% in 2018 to 50% by 2035. 3.5 crore new seats will be added to higher education institutions. The committee, headed by former ISRO chairman K. Kasturi Rangan, submitted the draft of the new education policy to Human Resource Development Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank. The draft of the new education policy was made public for the opinion of various parties.
Regarding the technology, you know that the internet and things like that were just getting into the picture in 30 years back. And today you know the importance of internet in the context of a technology for education. Also, things are now changing even faster in terms of artificial intelligence, expert systems, machine intelligence and things of that kind. And they are all going to have disruptive influence on the educational front.
Built on the foundational pillars of access, equity, quality, affordability and accountability, this policy is aligned to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and aims to transform India into a vibrant knowledge society and global knowledge superpower by making both school and college education more holistic, flexible, multidisciplinary, suited to 21st century needs, and aimed at bringing out the unique capabilities of each student. Bureau Report, DD India.
And the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a tweet, wholeheartedly welcomed the approval of the National Education Policy 2020. He termed the NEP as long due and much awaited reform in the education sector, which will transform millions of lives in the times to come. In a series of tweets, in fact, the Prime Minister said NEP 2020 is based on the pillars of access, equity, quality, affordability, accountability. In this era of knowledge, where learning, research and innovation are important, the NEP will transform India into a vibrant knowledge hub. The Prime Minister further tweeted saying NEP 2020 gives the utmost importance towards ensuring universal access to school education. There is emphasis on aspects such as better infrastructure, innovative education centers to bring back dropouts into the mainstream, facilitating multiple pathways to learning, among others. In another tweet, the Prime Minister said replacing 10+2 structure of school curricula with 5+3+3+4 curricular structure will benefit the younger generation, the younger children, and it will also be in tune with the global best practices for development of the mental faculties of a child. There are reforms in school curricula and pedagogy too, and the Prime Minister in a tweet said that the NEP 2020 has provisions to set up a gender inclusion fund and also special education zones. Now, these will specially focus on making education more inclusive. NEP 2020 would improve the education infrastructure and opportunities for persons with disabilities. The Prime Minister further tweeted saying that thanks to the NEP 2020, the Indian higher education sector will have a holistic and multidisciplinary approach. The undergraduate education will offer flexible curricula, creative combinations of subjects, integration of vocational education. The Prime Minister's tweet further said that undergraduate education would also include multiple entry and exit points with appropriate certification. An academic bank of credit will be set up to enable digital storage of credits earned from different higher educational institutions, which can also be transferred and counted as a part of the final degree. The Prime Minister's tweet said, respecting the spirit of Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat, the NEP 2020 includes systems to promote Indian languages, including Sanskrit. Now, many foreign languages will also be offered at the secondary level. Indian Sign Language will also be standardized across the country. The Prime Minister's tweet said that aspects such as widening the availability of scholarships, strengthening infrastructure for open and distance learning, online education and increasing the usage of technology have received great attention in the NEP. These are vital reforms for the education sector. The Prime Minister's tweet further added that framing of the NEP 2020 will be remembered as a shining example of participative governance. I thank all those who have worked hard in the formulation of the NEP 2020. May education brighten our nation and lead to its prosperity. Now, the legendary singer Asha Bhosle has also tweeted saying, I'm very happy to see the importance being given to art and culture in the new education policy announced by our government and spearheaded by the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. So let's look at the few highlights of the new National Education Policy 2020. First of all, it's a new education policy for the 21st century. Definitely something quite different for the 21st century. The education policy is coming after 34 years, and the HRD ministry is now called the Education Ministry. Quite aptly so also, because it deals mostly with education. Now, major reforms in higher education are taking place. One among them is that 50% gross enrollment target ratio by 2035. That means they want at least 50% of all people who are at that college level to remain in college, to be enrolled in college. Provision for multiple entry and exit. So that's flexibility, because you can enroll, you can carry on your education, you can work, because it looks at all the other kinds of needs. Graded academic, administrative, financial autonomy of institutions. So the institutions have been given a greater autonomy, but there is a single regulator for all the higher education institutions, except for legal and medical. They will be all other higher education institutions will all be looked after under one body. E-courses in regional languages. That's important because the number of languages in our country, they all have to be preserved and they all have to be developed also. Virtual labs to be developed, and that's also important because that helps in using the digital means. A National Educational Technology Forum, NETF, to be created. So we are moving very carefully and clearly into a digital framework of education. Board exams to be they will test the actual knowledge and not the rote learning that the previous system was. I mean, people learned whatever they could and they could just reproduce that on the paper and they got good marks. But here you would have to think everything out, and so you're actually doing through a totally different kind of evaluation. The mother tongue will be the medium of instruction till the 5th standard, which is extremely important because people continue to speak in their mother tongue. It's at home, they learn that from their parents, and it'll be the easiest language in which they can understand things, especially when they are children, right up to the 5th grade. Now, comprehensive report card on skills and capabilities. That's important because otherwise what the report card used to do was just focus on marks. Now they are looking at the overall personality of the child. MPhil courses are going to be discontinued. One wondered what that special step was, before you did your PhD, you did an MPhil. Really, you could just move from the master's into the PhD program like in most other universities across the world. Now, common norms for private and public higher education institutions. So this is going to be, they're going to be the same for both private and public. The common entrance exam will be there for admissions to universities, so there'll just be one kind of examination which will probably assess your ability to your aptitude, and then we'll see how you can fit into any kind of course that you would like. A school curriculum is to be reduced to the core concepts, so not too much pressure on the child. And there's also going to be more wholesome development because vocational educational classes should begin from the class 6 so that the child has a more rounded type of education. So we're going to take a short break and we'll put all this into context with our guests in this, after this, with a discussion with our guests who will be joining us via satellite link. Do stay with us.
As relations between India and Israel blossom, the two countries join hands against COVID-19. India supplied medicines and masks to Israel. Israel reciprocates by sharing technology. Rapid coronavirus test is a game changer. It can deliver results in less than 30 seconds. We speak to the ambassadors of India and Israel to understand the current and future trajectory of bilateral ties.
तरक्की की राह पर नया जम्मू कश्मीर और लद्दाख, गांव से लेकर शहर तक अमन की फिजा में निर्माण की खास पहल।
हमारी जो विमेन है उनको इस चीज का हक मिला है, उनको अब राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी है।
ट्रांसपोर्ट फैसिलिटी बहुत बढ़िया हो गई है यहाँ पर। ये रोड अब काफी दूर दराज के इलाके में पीछे जा रही है।
आज वो पैसे आएगा, वो सीधा हमारे काम पर आएगा।
जम्मू कश्मीर लद्दाख तब और अब 30 जुलाई से शाम 7:30 बजे सिर्फ डीडी न्यूज पर।
And that brings us to In Focus tonight, and In Focus is simply this. NEP 2020, Transforming Education. NEP 2020, Transforming Education. Joining us for a discussion on this is Professor V. Ramagopal Rao, who's the Director, IIT Delhi. Professor V. Ramagopal Rao, Director, IIT Delhi, and Professor D.P. Singh is the Chairman of UGC. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. We'll start with you, Professor Singh. How will all this improve the caliber of the Indian student at the end of the day? I mean, what is the basic aim? What are we hoping to get out of the student?
Namaskar. First of all, we are grateful to our Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister for giving us this new National Education Policy 2020 after a gap of 34 years. Yes. I also compliment the academic fraternity on this new education policy. This policy is very important, and because the policy actually perceives and the vision is very clear. The policy highlights about the value education. It also highlights on the holistic education on one hand, and at the same time it also highlights on the vocational education starting from class 6th, and the skill development, which is directly related to the increasing the employability of the students.
Yes.
It also talks about the environment and sustainability. It highlights the ICT enabled education, and not only in teaching learning but also use of technology in governance, in management, in institutional affairs, and also in total management of the educational system. It also highlights on developing our learners not only as the responsible Indian citizens but also as the global citizens.
Okay.
On one hand,
Right.
it highlights and focuses on the Indian arts, culture and languages. On the other side, it also highlights on the internationalization of higher education. And therefore, one side, it focuses on the multidisciplinarity of the education and brings a new nomenclature about the university, that is multidisciplinary education and research universities, and also phasing out the affiliating system which is existing today in coming 15 years, and to bring in graded autonomy for the higher educational institutions and to make them degree awarding institutions.
Let's bring in
so this is
Professor
something which is extremely new.
Right. Let's bring in Professor Ram Gopal Rao as well into the discussion. Now, the important thing, as Professor D.P. Singh was mentioning about the multidisciplinary institutions. Now, IIT Delhi was, considered as a technical institution, but how is multidisciplinary going to change the focus of institutes that of excellence, like let's say IIT, in the long run?
This is a very welcome step. If you look at the entire new educational policy, it is in a way transformational in nature, and it talks about all the right things. For example, increasing the gross enrollment ratio to 50%.
Yes.
That would mean almost doubling up our higher education sector. So because we are currently at 24%, 25% kind of gross enrollment ratio, so doubling in the next 15 years, which is a major kind of a thing that's happening. The multidisciplinary, if you look at the Indian higher educational system and compare it with, let's say, the US, which is probably has some of the finest universities of the world, is the difference is this multi-dimensionality.
Yes.
In India, the higher education is highly fragmented. You want to do engineering, you go to IITs. You want to do medicine, you go to AIIMS. You want to do management, you go to IIMs. I think, that is not the way higher education needs to be done. If you are looking at an impactful kind of research, then many of these disciplines need to work together. For example, I can list out at least 20 problems where a medical school on the campus interacting with electrical engineering department in the biomedical kind of an area. All the diagnostic technologies and lot of those technologies where electronics and biomedical can be involved. Those sort of things would have gotten a huge sort of a push.
Absolutely. So there's an interdisciplinary approach. That's why we need multidisciplinary education. But I'll come back to both you gentlemen. We're getting in some more news now. Prasoon Joshi has also tweeted saying that it's remarkable to see art, culture, languages, diversity deservedly finding the emphasis in the new education policy. Education can't be seen from the narrow transactional lens. Indigenous arts, language are the lifeblood of a vibrant society, and NEP 2020 straddles the best of the culture and the contemporary. And we also have other people who have spoken. In fact, Anil Kapoor has also spoken, and here it is. I congratulate the Government of India for giving the country an education policy that will nurture a child's creative and unique abilities rather than only judging them on their exam scores. So we can see that there's widespread praise for the policy. Let's bring in Dr. D.P. Singh once again. So looking at the focus, and the way people are praising the overall approach, one looks also at the way that the curriculum has been made flexible in a sense. People, that flexibility is important for students, because otherwise it sets them down a particular path and they are not able to change their minds, or they're not able to evolve as students. How important is flexibility?
Flexibility is very important. It's very important, and it provides opportunities to the learners to take the subjects on the basis of their interest, on their basis of their choices. As Professor Rao was talking about the multidisciplinarity and the interdisciplinary aspects, I know that the university is a place which is a universal center of the knowledge, and which provides opportunities for holistic development of the personality. And therefore, on one side we require mental and intellectual development, but we also require physical, psychological, emotional and spiritual development of the learners.
Yes,
that is the holistic development of the personality of the learners. So this multidisciplinary approach actually will provide the opportunity to the learners, and this multi-entry and multi-exit type of system will have more flexibility to select the subjects of their choices, and on the basis of that, a student who is whose major is physics, chemistry or math, he can also take music or fine arts or any other subject of his or her choice, and
yes,
that will provide him such opportunity.
Professor Ram Gopal Rao, how important is online education and the use of digital means? Because in the lockdown we've seen that many institutions have adapted to the potential that digital means of education has. I mean, it basically can unite the whole world. So I mean, how are we looking at online education as some sort of having a lot of potential for the future?
I would think so. For example, even at IIT Delhi, we are now launching major online programs. In the last 3 months, at least 300 of our courses have gone online. That is a silver lining in the entire COVID kind of a crisis. And for example, what the online does basically is it helps you to scale up your education. Now we can offer, let's say, a course on AI taught by some of our best faculty members at IIT Delhi. Yes. Now there is no limit as to how many people can take that course. And that is the power of online. And unfortunately, in our institutions, because we are focusing so much on the physical presence, the limitation of the infrastructure, all that comes up. But at least in areas like IT or even the cognitive technologies kind of disciplines, in many of these disciplines, online education is possible, and online education can be scaled more easily. And I think this way we can reach to the interior corners of the country. They get to listen to the best professors of the IIT system, to delivering lectures to them. And also it's all on demand. It need not even be in a synchronous kind of a mode. All these lectures, if they are available, it's all available on demand. You develop those skills. You may be working somewhere, but you want to develop a skill now in a certain area. I think you can do, by doing both the things together. I think that is the flexibility that online education offers. That is something that you will see happening more and more even from the IIT system, right, even in the next few months, for example.
In fact, there are more and more reactions coming in. CII has also welcomed the National Education Policy 2020, which was approved by the Cabinet today. It's a landmark document coming after several years of consultations, and the government has brought out a commendable education strategy to meet the changing demands in education. CII is happy to note that several of its recommendations have been incorporated in the policy, such as the creation of special education zones, mission mode efforts for achieving foundational learning outcomes, and emphasis on vocationalization of school education. CII looks forward to working closely with the Ministry of Education on various action points which were discussed at the CII Education Summit and which have become part of the new system with the approval of the NEP today. Professor Singh, the point is of of
Yes.
vocationalization is basically to improve the skill sets of labor. How comprehensive is the policy in achieving this? You know, you did talk about a holistic kind of in your first answer about the basic aims. But at the end of the day, a person has to go out and get a job, and what kind of high-paying jobs can they get? Will the education policy look at that?
I think the policy is very comprehensive, very focused, and it talks about starting vocational education as early as from class 6. Earlier it was from the after the class 10th, there were some vocational programs as 10+2 courses, but this is something which is totally new and which will provide opportunities to the students to learn new skills and to make them more employable, more which are required in the job market, and that's why the industry associations are welcoming the new education policy. And there, one side, this employability aspect is important. If you look at the holistically on the focus of the policy, then on one side it talks about developing good human beings, but at the same time it also focuses on the skill development and making learners more employable.
Yes.
It also talks about internationalization of education and also developing our learners as the global citizens. It means they should have a world view.
Absolutely.
On one side, they should be good, responsible Indian citizens, and therefore more focus is there on value education and also on fundamental duties and constitutional values, also on environment and sustainable development. So holistically the policy caters to all the aspects
Right.
of the learners, and particularly it also talks about the Indian arts, culture and languages. It also mentions about the Indian Institute of Translation and Interpretation and also National Institute of Pali, Persian and Prakrit. So focus is also on Indian arts, culture and languages.
Professor Ram Gopal Rao, you know, the IITs have always taken the cream of people, and it's because of a very tough JEE exam, and you know, people, only the cream rises to the top. But that followed the 10+2 model of school curricula. Now we're having the 5+3+3+4 curriculum structure. What are, you know, I mean, first of all, how do you look at this 5+3+3+4 system? And you know, are you going to get better students into IIT at the end of the day?
I think since we conduct these examinations, a lot of normalization happens at the examination level. So I am not concerned about I think the quality will depend on the nature of examinations we conduct. I think that since IITs take a lot of care in conducting these examinations, the normalization will happen. But I know I would like to mention one important point of national education policy,
Yes.
which is important for the country to know. The multidisciplinary university thing, as Professor Singh also mentioned, you know,
Yes.
what it essentially enables us is, because now you have multiple disciplines on the campus, you know, the more product oriented research will happen. Because now if I want to develop a lab to land kind of a technology,
Yes.
want to work on a problem, you know, focusing on societal requirement, problems don't have a discipline. And because we have now categorized these areas and, you know, created these walls between them, the product oriented research today is becoming an issue. With multidisciplinary research, our universities will be able to address the societal problems. And even, you know, to me, it is all eventually what will happen with the NEP is, you know, the unlike minds will come together. The innovation happens when unlike minds come together.
Right.
What are these unlike minds? People with different culture. The internationalization is one thing. NEP is focusing very aggressively. People
Alright.
with different disciplines, they are also unlike minds. A medical doctor, an electrical engineer talking to each other will lead to a lot of innovation. And
Right.
also people with different attitudes, whether it is, you know, people coming from industry or, you know, people with completely different way of looking at problems. When they come and join hands with each other on our campuses, I
Yes.
think, you know, lot of innovation will happen, lot of new ideas will come in. Otherwise, you know, our institutions have become very homogeneous right now.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I think that is hurting the impact that these institutions can have. I think NEP opens doors now for multidisciplinarity, more product-oriented research, more societal kind of impact. I think this is a good step.
It's indeed transformational. Thanks very much, Professor Ram Gopal Rao, as well as Professor D.P. Singh for joining us. We can see that there's going to be a lot of change in our educational system, right from the students' point of view, as well as from teaching. There's going to be more methods, different methods of teaching, and a more holistic and comprehensive education policy. Well, CII, as I said earlier, has welcomed the National Education Policy 2020, which was approved by the Cabinet today. It's a landmark document, they say, coming after several years of consultation, and the government has brought out a commendable education strategy to meet the changing demands in education. CII is happy to note that several of its recommendations have been incorporated in the policy, such as the creation of special education zones, mission mode efforts for achieving foundational learning outcomes, and emphasis on vocationalization of school education. CII also looks forward to working closely with the Ministry of Education on various action points which were discussed at the CII Education Summit and which have become part of the new system with the approval of the NEP today. Moving on to our next story then, the first batch of new combat-proven fighter aircraft in 2 decades arrived in Ambala today, and the 5 Rafale jets give the country's air power a strategic edge. Now, each jet was given a special water cannon salute at the strategically located airbase, Ambala. Prime Minister Narendra Modi tweeted in Sanskrit. He said that there is no virtue like protecting the nation, and there is no vow like the defense of the country. And Defense Minister Rajnath Singh also tweeted and said that the birds have landed safely. And he added that if it is anyone who should be worried about this, then it's about the capability of the Indian Air Force, then it should be those who want to threaten India's territorial integrity. Here's our report.
The indomitable Rafale. As the mean fighting bird landed in India, the jets heralded the beginning of a new era for the Indian Air Force and the security of the nation. This is indeed a historic moment for the Indian Air Force. The skies over the city of Ambala reverberated with the roar of twin engines powered by 5 Rafales, as the 5 Rafales announced their arrival with a triumphant elan and a beastly roar. The proud moment was felt in every heart that beats for India. The arrival also gave a powerful message to the adversaries that the air defense of India has gone up several notches. The most modern 4.5 generation fighter aircraft was given a grand welcome, with water salute showering the hopes and adulation of the entire nation. IAF Chief Air Marshal R.K.S. Bhadoria was also present on the occasion. Earlier, as the 5 Rafales entered the Indian airspace, they were escorted by 2 Air Dominance Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter jets. The sight was one to behold. 7 most modern jets flying in an arrow formation. Before that, the Indian Navy welcomed the fighter jets in the Indian Ocean region. INS Kolkata established contact with the aero leader of the formation. The communication between the 2 wings of defense forces was watched later by the entire nation.
Naval warship Delta 63, Arrow Leader, many thanks. Most reassuring to have an Indian warship guarding the seas.
Arrow Leader, Delta 63, may you touch the sky with glory. Happy landings.
Prime Minister Modi also shared a video of the landing of Rafale and tweeted in Sanskrit, Rashtra Raksha Samam Punyam, Rashtra Raksha Samam Vratam, Rashtra Raksha Samam Yagyo, Dashto Nevacha, Nevacha, Nabha Sparsham Deeptam, Swagatam. That there is no holy act, no vow, no religious act bigger than the defense of the nation. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh also congratulated the Indian Air Force. He tweeted, the birds have landed safely in Ambala. The touchdown of Rafale combat aircraft in India marks the beginning of a new era in our military history. These multi-role aircraft will revolutionize the capabilities of the IAF I would like to add, if it is anyone who should be worried about or critical about this new capability of the Indian Air Force, it should be those who want to threaten our territorial integrity. Union Home Minister Amit Shah also tweeted Rafale touchdown as a historic day for our vigorous Indian Air Force and a proud moment for India. These are the world's most powerful machines capable to thwart any challenge in the sky. I'm sure Rafale will help our air warriors to safeguard our skies with its mighty superiority. Union INB Minister Prakash Javadekar also called it a great day for the Indian Air Force. He tweeted, "A great day in the history of IAF MCC as first 5 Rafale fighters land at Ambala Air Base. Our government has bought a total of 36 Rafales from France. The remaining fighter aircraft will also land in India as per the timetable." The Rafales are the undisputed leaders of the skies. These 4.5 generation fighter aircraft are in a league of their own, completely dominating the sky warfare with unmatched avionics and missile delivery systems. The planes covered a journey of 7,000 kilometers from France. The journey included a mid-air refueling and an overnight stop at the Al Dhafra Air Base in UAE. The flight till Al Dhafra was given mid-air refueling support by French Air Force air refuelers, while the onboard journey was supported by IAF mid-air refuelers. The 3 single-seat and 2 twin-seat Omni-Roll fighters, flown by 7 IAF pilots of the 17th Golden Arrow Squadron, were led by Commanding Officer Group Captain Harkirat Singh.
These Rafales are being hailed as game changers for the country because this kind of platform and the kind of weapons that it carries, no one, neither our neighbors nor our adversaries, in fact no other country in Asia has the kind of weapons that the Rafale carries. For example, the beyond visual range Meteor missile, the Scalp air-to-ground cruise missile, the Hammer precision guided munition, and the capability of the engines to take off at very high altitudes. With camera person Spriti in Ambala, this is Nandita Dagar for DT News.
So let's take a look at the Rafales welcoming the number 17 Squadron, the Golden Arrows. Well, it's the first multi-role fighter aircraft in nearly 2 decades, as we can see. Obviously a great moment for our country. Now, it's obviously going to add to the strategic edge in the air power around, and as the Defence Minister said, only our adversaries need to be worried about that. Now, known for air superiority and precision strikes, that's what it's capable of. The Rafales were escorted by 2 Sukhoi 30 MKIs. We saw that visual in the story just a short while ago. The Rafales are capable of carrying potent weapons. That's their strength. And amongst these weapons are is the MBDA's Meteor, which is a beyond visual range air-to-air missile. And the Meteor is powered, in fact, by a unique rocket ramjet motor. Apart from the Meteor, there's also the Scalp cruise missile, and there's also the Mica weapon system. All these are French systems. There's also the Hammer system, which is under negotiations, and they will also be integrated. The Hammer system will also be integrated into the Rafale jets. So plenty of weapons on board the Rafale. It's a 59,000 crore rupee deal, which was signed in September 23rd, 2016 for 36 Rafale jets. And of these Rafale jets, we know that, in fact, three single-seater and 2 twin-seater jets have arrived already. And, well, the 10 Rafale jets have already been delivered to India. In fact, 5 of them are still in France because training missions are going on over there. But all the 36 will be delivered on schedule, which is by the end of 2021. And there will be 30 of these will be fighter jets and 6 will be trainers. So 30 will be fighter jets, 6 will be trainers, but the trainers are not much different. They are just twin-seaters. The trainers, in fact, have almost all the same features as the fighter jets and also can be used as fighter jets. So we're going to take another short break now at this point in time, and then we'll come back with more news. Stay with us.
तरक्की की राह पर नया जम्मू कश्मीर और लद्दाख, गांव से लेकर शहर तक अमन की फिजा में निर्माण की खास पहल।
हमारी जो विमेन है उनको इस चीज का हक मिला है, उनको अब राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी है।
ट्रांसपोर्ट फैसिलिटी बहुत बढ़िया हो गई है यहाँ पर। ये रोड अब काफी दूर दराज के इलाके में पीछे जा रही है।
आज वो पैसे आएगा, वो सीधा हमारे काम पर आएगा।
जम्मू कश्मीर लद्दाख, तब और अब 30 जुलाई से शाम 7:30 बजे सिर्फ डीडी न्यूज पर।
And we're getting more and more reactions, in fact, coming in on the new education policy. Let's take a look at this particular reaction. Aditya Dhar has said that probably the greatest news to come out of 2020 so far. This is going to change the lives of millions in years to come. Thank you, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, sir. The Josh is high in the new hashtag new education policy, hashtag NEP 2020, new education policy 2020. The Ministry of Home Affairs has issued new guidelines today for opening up of more activities in areas outside the containment zones in Unlock 3, which will come into effect from August 1, 2020. The process of phased reopening of activities has been extended further. The new guidelines issued today are based on feedback received from the states and the union territories and extensive consultation held with related central ministries and departments. The salient features of the new guidelines are restrictions on movement of individuals during night, that's night curfew. This has been removed. Yoga institutes and gymnasiums will be opened from August 5, 2020. In this regard, standard operating procedures will be issued by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare for ensuring social distancing and to contain the spread of COVID-19. Independence Day functions will be allowed with social distancing and by allowing other health protocols, example, wearing of masks. And in this regard, instructions issued by the MHA on 21/7/2020 shall be followed. After extensive consultations with states and union territories, it has been decided that schools, colleges, coaching institutions will remain closed till 31st August 2020. International air travel of passengers has been permitted in a limited manner under the Vande Bharat mission. Further opening up will take place in a calibrated manner. Activities not to be permitted include metro rail, cinema halls, swimming pools, entertainment parks, theatres, bars, auditoriums, assembly halls and similar places, social, political, sports, entertainment, academic, cultural, religious functions and other large congregations. Vulnerable persons, people above the age of 65 or people with comorbidities, pregnant women and children below the age of 10 years are advised to stay at home except for meeting essential requirements and for health purposes. The ITER organization is celebrating the start of assembly of ITER Tokamak, which is a ceremony today on the 28th of July 2020 at Saint-Paul-les-Durance, France. In his message, Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated ITER organization for their hard work and success so far. Taking note of the global participation of scientists and engineers, Prime Minister projected ITER to be a perfect illustration of the age-old Indian belief, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The entire world is working together for the betterment of mankind, and that India stands proud with its fair share of contributions in terms of its in-kind contributions, viz. The cryostat in vessel shields, substantial contributions to the cooling of water to help ITER to achieve and demonstrate its goal. On the occasion, the message from Prime Minister Narendra Modi was delivered by Jawad Ashraf, the Ambassador of India to France and Monaco. Assam witnessed further improvement from the flood situation. 21 districts are still affected and 3 more deaths have been reported, taking the toll to 107 according to the Assam State Disaster Management Authority, which has reported so on Wednesday, I beg your pardon. The 3 deaths have been reported from Barpeta, Kokrajhar and Kamrup district, and also the population affected by the flood water. It has come down to 16,54,984. The number of villages affected by the flood is at 1,536, which is under 54 revenue circles. The place is pretty badly affected. The worst affected district is Golpara, where more than 4 lakh people have been affected by the flood waters, and the number of relief camps is about 208, where about 37,000 people are taking shelter. 36 people have been evacuated by the NDRF and SDRF on Wednesday. The cropland area that is inundated has also come down to about 92,899 hectares. This is as per the ASDMA report. According to the KNPTR report, the floodwater reduced and is now at 65% of the Kaziranga National Park, and 65% of the Kaziranga National Park is underwater. So far, 142 animals have died and 165 are being rescued in the fourth wave of the floods in Assam. Early on Wednesday, the Chief Minister, Sarbanand Sonowal, visited the Dhemaji district, where he distributed relief materials to the flood-affected people and interacted with them. He also took stock of the ongoing reconstruction work of the embankments in the Kumthia River. And the flood situation in Bihar too, it's wreaked havoc in several states across the country. Bihar is no different. The situation remains grim there. In fact, the number of affected districts has risen now to 12, with Samastipur becoming the latest in the addition of the lists. The floods have affected around 29 lakh people across the state. East Champaran has been hit the worst. Heavy rains have further worsened the situation. Water levels in many rivers, including Bhuri Gandak, continue to rise above the danger levels. More and more areas are constantly coming under the grip of the floods. Houses have been destroyed. Teams of NDRF, SDRF are carrying out rescue and relief work in full swing. The state authorities are working with full force. In fact, around 800 community kitchens are working across the areas, and several areas provide food to over 4 lakh people as well. 26 shelter homes have been set up. The national capital experienced a pleasant weather after rains lashed Delhi NCR. The rains brought the temperature in Delhi NCR down by a few degrees. According to the IMD, the national capital is expected to receive heavy rainfall in the next 2 days. It has also issued an orange alert for the same. Now, Global Tiger Day is being celebrated today to spread awareness and promote tiger conservation. Leading from the front, India met its global commitment for recovering its wild tiger population 4 years earlier. India's tiger population now stands at 2,967, which is about 70% of the global tiger population. Project Tiger, which was launched in 1973 with just 9 tiger reserves, has now got many more reserves. India today has 50 tiger reserves with 2,967 tigers, as we said, and the tiger sits at the peak, in fact, of the food chain, and the increased numbers is testimony, in fact, of a robust biodiversity. Let's take a look at this video shared by the Union Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar. And finally, let's take a look at this COVID update from the country.
Fight against coronavirus continues in the country. Amid reports of rise in coronavirus cases, there are also reports of some relief too. The recovery rate has reached another high of 64.51% amongst COVID-19 patients. The case fatality rate has been progressively falling in the country. It stood at 2.23% on Wednesday, and it is lowest since 1st April 2020. The total number of recovered cases is fast approaching the 1 million mark. With 35,286 patients discharged in the last 24 hours, the total recoveries have jumped to 9,88,029. There are 5,09,447 active cases in the country. So far, 34,193 have died from this disease. Union Minister of State for Health and Family Welfare Ashwini Kumar Chaubey said that the situation in India is better as compared to the global scenario.
देश में हमने उस तांडव को बचाने का काम किया हमारी सरकार ने, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी ने, और हम दुनिया में बेहतर कर रहे हैं। दुनिया में अन्य देशों की अपेक्षा हम बेहतर ढंग से लोगों की रक्षा कर रहे हैं और कोविड के प्रति लोगों में जनजागरण करते हुए जो बराबर प्रधानमंत्री जी संदेश दे रहे हैं कि जान है तो जहान है, हम जान और जहान दोनों की रक्षा करने के लिए कटिबद्ध हैं।
In Madhya Pradesh, the state cabinet minister Ram Khilawan Patel tested COVID-19 positive. Before Patel, Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan and his 2 ministerial colleagues have tested positive.
जो भोपाल में कंटेनमेंट जोन थे, उन कंटेनमेंट को या तो बफर जोन करेंगे या घर तक सीमित रखने का विचार है। मुख्यमंत्री जी ने ये भी कहा कि पैसे की कोई कमी स्वास्थ्य सुविधाओं में नहीं आने दी जाएगी, चाहे अन्य विभागों के बजट में हमें कटौती करना पड़े।
Amid the spike in COVID-19 cases in Kerala, the district administration in Thiruvananthapuram decided to continue lockdown with certain relaxations in non-containment wards. The lockdown is in place in Thiruvananthapuram since 5th July. Bureau Report, DD India.
And with that, we conclude News Night for tonight. Thanks very much for being with us. Namaskar.